Hello everyone from the Kingdom of Cambodia. This is actually way earlier than I'd ever film. I think it's nearly like 2 p.m, but I did stay up till like 7 a.m. planning this video. I'm just busy this week, so I need to get it done early. But today, we're talking about my favorite topic. Well, one of them. Can you guess which one it is? We're talking about Jordan Peterson, which we spoke about a lot on this channel recently. I don't know why. He just keeps popping up in my head. I guess he's, taking over my mind like he does with so many younger people. And something that I actually recognized about a year ago now is that he's very, very popular with NoFap communities. Now, I made 2 videos on NoFap, like I said, last year. One was just about the insanity of certain NoFap communities, and that was more talking about semen retention communities, which is really, really bizarre. So go watch that one. But also I talked about another one, I think, which fits in better here, which is why like ultra conservative people love this and all the conspiracy theories that go into it, especially, a form of cultural Marxism as well, about why the adult entertainment industry even exists in the first place, which I'm not going to talk about in this video, but if you care about any of that stuff, go check out those videos. The second one is actually one of my better viewed videos, but today I just want to talk about Jordan Peterson's advice about people who are addicted to films from the adult entertainment industry. And sorry, I'm going to phrase it like that. I know it sounds weird. I do actually like to get paid for my videos, so I'm going to try and get this monetized. And there are like YouTube clips circling of him talking about this stuff. But as we're going to get into, despite him being so popular on NoFap communities, the advice he's given to get over this addiction is quite poor when you match it up with what like actual doctors recommend. And then also, as we're going to see, that Jordan Peterson and liking his stuff, sometimes for the self-help reasons, is often a gateway to believing in other things, as we're going to see on some posts in the NoFap community itself. Because in my conversation with FD Signify, we were kind of speculating like why Jordan Peterson has so many fans who are surprised by his more conservative politics. And what we kind of got into is that there's a lot of people who originally liked Jordan Peterson for his self-help stuff, and then maybe either progressed with him on his political journey, or as we've seen in other videos, outright rejected him because of him joining things like the Daily Wire, for example. So we're going to go through the more viral clip of Jordan Peterson talking about this addiction. Then we're going to talk about the medical advice. And then we're going to talk about just like the general community and why they like him and why that's a problem. Before we go any further, please like the video. And in the comments, please let me know, do you know anyone personally who has bought into like this NoFap cult? Because that's what it feels like at the moment, because I don't really have a problem at all with NoFap as an idea. And I've seen some pretty positive things coming out of the community. But when I go on it, like how much they conform in their love for Jordan Peterson and other people like that is just kind of bizarre in my opinion. And I can't see where in his self-help work is there such great advice that he must be held up as like, the expert on quitting watching these films. So let me know down in the comments. Also follow me on social media at the Kavernacle on Twitter and on Instagram. And on Instagram, I'm posting all about my travels to Southeast Asia and stuff. And also, if you care about that, on Patreon, I'm posting one exclusive video per month of me and my girlfriend Holly talking about what country we've been in. Recently just posted our one about Vietnam. Very fun to film that. So if you care about any of that stuff, consider becoming a patron. I'm trying to build up as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible. Other benefits include getting my Switch friend code and getting access to the Discord server. Also check out my second channel, the Kavernacle Extra, where I just post random stuff. And also check out the subreddit. All of that stuff down in the description. So before we get into the more viral clip of Jordan Peterson talking about this specific addiction, I just want to talk about him and addiction, and I've actually made a video on that as well. My problem with his self-help advice is he generally focuses more on the individual. Like if you have an addiction, that is on you and it's up to you to solve, and it's basically all your fault as well. And of course, most people know most addictions, as we're going to get into, are not people's own fault. There's a variety of factors that cause someone to be an addict to anything. But like I said, Jordan Peterson kind of focuses just on the person, and then his advice springs from that and talking about, how you get over certain addictions by doing stuff like, the meme cleaning your room, or basically organizing your life and trying to do this so I guess you have a more positive life. There's another problem is that he didn't actually follow his own self-help advice because he got medical treatment for his addictions, even going into a very, very dangerous medically induced coma in Russia to try and beat his addiction. And I read a good article the other day speculating on why he'd even do this. And I just find it quite hypocritical. Someone like that is giving so much advice to vulnerable people when they can't follow it themselves. But then these people play it off saying, you know, he admits he's not perfect, but the advice is still good. But as we're going to get into, I don't think his advice is good. And actually, let me know in the comments. I was speculating on Twitter, should I make a video after I've read 12 Rules for Life? Because I've been thinking about doing that. But then I found out it's 440 pages long. I actually saw on the Jordan Peterson subreddit once, someone said it was their first book. Could you imagine your first book being a 440-page book written by Jordan Peterson? I feel really bad for that person. I doubt they're ever going to read another book again. So there's a viral clip of Jordan Peterson talking about this addiction specifically. And it's been going viral on YouTube, even recently. Like, the videos I've been looking at the comments for came out like 10 months ago and have like 500,000 views. And here he's just talking about how you beat it. And again, highlighting a lot of my problems with his self-help stuff. He basically boils it down to just stop it. Like, just stop watching adult films to beat that addiction, because that is, you know, such great advice. But let's get into this clip.
Question about that, Jordan Peterson, Dr. Peterson. The men's sexual attraction becomes warped. And so how can a man whose sexual attraction to women has become warped to the extreme, and how can that man go back to now being attracted to, you know, more natural looking women, or more women that could be around their, you know, their lives instead of the projected.
Well, deprivation is helpful. Yeah. You know, I mean, so I think it's reasonable to assume that there's a novelty edge in pornography, like there is in so many quasi-addictive phenomena. And so it has to become, because novelty is a sexual kick, it has to stay novel, and that means that over time it's going to become more extreme. So that's not good. Well, so how do you resensitize yourself in some sense? Well, you stop. You stop. And then hopefully you recover. And then you deprive yourself of that outlet, let's say. And you might say, well, you know, is that absolutely necessary? And maybe, I don't know, man. Like, have you ever really met a guy who is proud of that? Like, you know what I mean? That makes him feel like, I'm the guy, man. It's like, what a man. I don't believe anyone feels that. And to me, maybe I'm wrong. And to me, that's an indication that, yeah, we know. No, it's pretty cheap. And it's a non-trivial technological problem. You know, it's now possible for young men to look at more beautiful nude women in one day than any man has ever seen, you know, prior to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, than any man in history had ever seen. That's not nothing. That's something.
So there you just see him advocating for stopping, like, cold turkey. And that might work for some people. Like, some people do that with addictions. In my opinion, from what I've read, it doesn't really sound like the best thing to do, as we're going to get into. But that's what he's advocating for. But of course, you guys know, and he should know himself as someone who's an addict, people with addictions often suffer from other things, right? Either that be mental health issues or growing up in a certain environment. And although being addicted to adult content is not treated as seriously by the medical community, in my mind, a lot of the problems with it do stem from the same causes as general addiction to anything. And he's talking about desensitization and things like that, and the way, of course, adult film content can warp a brain as well. Like, that is something that happens, especially if you're an addict, especially to young people. This is a problem. Although I'm not like some sort of Puritan, I don't generally think it's a bad thing, although I do think the industry has so many problems. Like I've said before in other videos, my main problem with Jordan Peterson's self-help advice is how it makes it an individual problem. And in this case specifically, I don't know about all cases, it seems like it's an individual solution as well. Like, don't seek medical treatment, don't seek help, just quit cold turkey and you'll be fine after that. It might be hard, you've got to deprive yourself, but, you know, I don't think personally that is a good idea. And a lot of medical professionals also don't think it's a good idea. So WebMD wrote a good article about this. So adult film addiction, 5 treatments that could help. While this addiction is not currently recognized as a medical condition, those who are excessively consuming this might experience powerful cravings, neglect their responsibilities, and engage in self-defeating behaviors in order to continue. And it gives like various different treatments, so behavior modification. So Dr. Daniel Scher, clinical psychologist and sex therapy consultant for Invigor Medical in Washington, recommends becoming aware of behaviors and triggers through CBT. CBT works by helping a person to identify challenge and change patterns of thinking and behavior that fuels this use. Scher also uses motivational interviewing or strategic questions to guide clients towards improvement. MI guides them to think about the pros and cons of their addiction and nudges them in the direction of change that is going to improve their lives. Mindfulness can also help. Science has shown that when combined with therapy, mindfulness can really help a person to take control of their urges. So other suggestions are like hypnosis and one more, medication. So medication could also help with some cases of excessive use. Pharmacological interventions have focused on treating coexisting psychiatric disorders and targeting hypersexual or compulsive sexual behaviors with selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors called SSRIs. They're normally prescribed for depression, increase the body's serotonin. The rationale for using this is based on animal models which show a decrease in sexual behaviors with increase in serotonin. That is just some medical experts talking about like various treatment options, but like they were saying, it's not really classified as a medical condition yet. And I have no doubt, because it's such a taboo subject, there hasn't been as much research done into the whole topic of addiction to adult film content. So probably in the future, there will be more treatments available. But Jordan Peterson never advocates for people getting treatment for this addiction. I don't understand why the NoFap community like him so much, because he's written a self-help book and said some things about the issue which aren't really helpful, in my opinion, if your advice is, well, just quit. Anyone could tell you that. And also, talking about addiction and Jordan Peterson, I read a good article on Healthline, and it talks about the risk factors for just addiction in general. I think this is focused more on substance abuse, but I think it's important to keep all this stuff in mind when we're talking about this issue. So risk factors for addiction. People of all backgrounds and beliefs can experience addiction. It can be hard to understand why some people are more prone to it than others. Regardless of your upbringing or moral code, many factors can raise your risk of becoming addicted to alcohol and other drugs. Your genetics, environment, medical history, and age all play a role. So if your family members have experienced addiction, you're more likely to experience it too. If you have an addictive personality, you may be at risk of a wide range of addictions. For example, if you have an alcoholic parent, you might choose not to drink, but still become addicted to smoking or gambling. Addiction isn't a matter of weak willpower or a lack of morals. The chemical reactions that happen in your brain when you have an addiction are quite different than those that happen in someone without one. That explains why one person may be able to smoke a cigarette every so often for pleasure, while another needs them on a daily basis. In the medical community, you can also have a dual diagnosis. If you have both an addictive disorder and another mental health condition, such as depression, underlying mental health issues can increase your risk of addiction. In turn, an addiction can increase the severity of other mental health conditions. This creates a vicious cycle in which your addiction tends to progress quickly and with severe consequences. So that is obviously like really, really basic stuff and really basic science of someone being an addict. And you know, Jordan Peterson, despite his work in psychology, you think he'd be more aware of how environmental factors affect these things. And even if he is, his solution to it, in my opinion, focuses too much on the individual, when so many people recommend that when you go through something like CBT, for example, you do a bunch of stuff that Jordan Peterson advocates, but you do it with either medication and also under the supervision of a medical professional to actually work, rather than all gather on an online community like NoFap and egg each other on while you try and quit cold turkey, which seems to be the case in a lot of instances. Now I want to go into the NoFap community itself. So NoFap is not the same as semen retention. I know this all sounds really, really strange. NoFap is primarily about kicking addiction through not fapping, basically, right? And you're meant to go like cold turkey from doing this, stop whatever. And generally, although it sounds kind of weird on the surface, it's not like the worst place. But I will say a lot of people here also don't advocate for treatment, it seems, and it feels like a lot of them are not really digging deeper into the underlying issues which cause addiction. And I think that's kind of embodied by them liking Jordan Peterson so much. And then I think that's a bit dangerous because not only do you listen to his like advice and everything, but then you get influenced by his politics. So if we go into the actual subreddit itself, which is a better place to read this stuff. So the subreddit has like 1 million members. This makes me laugh a lot because I post this on my Instagram story all the time. Like all these Tom Hardy, Cillian Murphy, Peaky Blinders, like grind set memes. So this is their top post of like the last month. So day 1, 6 months challenge. Know that word. Wake up before 7 a.m. Drink only water. Read 15 pages per day. Work out 5 times per week. Take risks and start a side hustle. I don't know what this has to do with NoFap, so type yes if you accept. Yeah, this stuff is so stupid, and for some reason, do I have to make a whole video on this? It's always Tom Hardy or Cillian Murphy. And if you go through it, there's just like loads of posts about Jordan Peterson and quotes. So here's one. Adult content is not the only reason your life is bad. Many of you would agree with Jordan Peterson saying clean up your house before you change the world. But what if your house is messy because of the world? I'm not saying many of you don't have good intentions, just something to consider. So another Jordan Peterson quote, it isn't that you're trying to quit adult content. It's not the right way to think about it. The right way to think about it is that you're trying to figure out how to have a better life. So someone posted Jordan Peterson's 12 rules for life, and there's got 443 upvotes. It has comments like, this book is full of so much common sense, but articulated in only that way JP could articulate. It's a great quick read, 440 pages, and certainly in terms of structuring one's life in a positive manner, I highly recommend this to everyone. I've got to get down and finish 12 Rules for Life. Listening to him speak is very inspiring, but the book is a true well of information. The book is a stellar read. My brother got it in Amazon a few weeks ago. I've only read some 30-something pages, so you've barely read any of it. I find myself making some big goals for myself this year. One of them is generating 100K. Jordan is the truth. Jordan will be put down in our history books as the final defense against the dark side. Political correctness and the feminine matrix, which we all coexist in today. Ironically enough, things won't get better unless men stop masturbating all the time, stand up straight and speak from the bottom of their balls, and speak truth without giving an F. Whether or not we like it, I'm turning 22 in 2 weeks, and one thing I want to kill is the nice guy syndrome that has plagued me my entire life. Talked a lot about Jordan Peterson being a bad influence on young men who are vulnerable, right? So this guy is saying, I don't want to be a nice guy anymore. Let me just write a big rant on a NoFap subreddit about how Jordan Peterson is the best. And I basically am still a nice guy because we live in the feminine matrix and we must fight against political correctness. So again, this guy is not a good role model for these people suffering from addiction, and he's not a good role model in general. So before we get into some more like unhinged posts, you just have stuff like this from the book 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson, 900 upvotes. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. That sounds like something you'd see on your mum's like kitchen wall or something. Jordan Peterson on the Damned reminded me it isn't enough to try anymore. It's time to do. Let's be strong, brothers. 205 upvotes. Other people, if you make no sacrifice in your life will be the sacrifice. Jordan Peterson, easily the best quote for NoFap in my opinion. And then sadly, I just got curious and typed Andrew Tate into the NoFap search bar because I've made that whole video comparing Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate. So someone writing, probably going to get hate for this, but I literally stopped because I seen this Andrew Tate video saying people with addictions are pussies, but that's not the main reason. He said he can't stop cigars and never wants to do one again and it wouldn't affect him. I thought to myself, I can stop watching adult content and never look back, and just did. Like, it's sad that before I literally couldn't stop, but now I just think, what the F, and I'm okay. So isn't that so good? Andrew Tate is giving the same advice as Jordan Peterson. You just stop, and then this guy thinks it's good. So then other people are like, watch Andrew Tate. Like, seriously, this guy started from the bottom and now he's at the top of the food chain. Watching podcasts featuring Andrew Tate and his brother is worth every second. It helps, seriously. But now I want to contrast 2 things I've seen on this subreddit. One more recent and one a bit older. It's one person just writing some unhinged essay about Jordan Peterson, and then one person saying all this like macho Jordan Peterson, like manosphere stuff is really unhelpful, which I agree with. It also has like no upvotes, which I found a bit disappointing considering there's so many posts in this subreddit all saying how great Jordan Peterson is for giving like this most basic bitch advice ever. So here's the first one I want to read. Day 2 NoFap. Jordan Peterson, Social Hierarchies and Perpetual War. One realization that has helped me avoid the temptation to watch adult content and fap is that I'm a loser. I've always told myself I don't bother about others' opinions of me, but that's a blatant lie. I've been telling myself. Going through Jordan Peterson's lectures, I realized that a person's position in social hierarchies they are a part of matters dearly to them, and each person is intrinsically motivated to improve their standing in the hierarchies. Loss of one's position in social hierarchies due to individual missteps or inaction as others go up can be extremely distressing, and people lose their will to live, become dumb, conform to social perception of their diminished status, and act the role society assigns them. In essence, social perception of your position in hierarchies and your reputation is your destiny. Fapping was an escape for me, escapes from the harsh reality of a day at class where I made a dumb mistake and saw my standing go down in the eyes of my peers and hated myself for it. A bad day at work when I couldn't present my work convincingly. But now I realize that it's a war out there every single day. Every single moment you're putting yourself out there, everyone is competing all the time to go up social hierarchies, and if you do nothing, you'll stay at the bottom forever, wretched and miserable. It's inevitable you hurt others as you go up, but it's either hurt or get hurt. Your peers are sizing you up, trying to keep you down in the social hierarchies you're in with them, and your position on social hierarchies is your destiny. I think women see this much more clearly than men, since they need to find the right partner that sustains them and protect them. That's why you need to accept that you're in a war. Thanks to this mindset, I find that I've embraced the need to be aggressive and competitive in how I present myself, in how I speak and act because it's my destiny. I've been an introverted loner addicted to fapping anime and fluffy romance dramas and effeminate crap, but no more. I fully accepted the fact that I'm not going to have a day of rest as long as I'm alive and out there engaging with people. I find myself very motivated to work on life now. I'm learning how to code, and I find myself less distracted by the thoughts of women because I'm working to improve myself for my own sake. And women are just welfare seekers that will attach themselves to the guy that could best provide for them. I'm going to find out to the end and not die a sore loser, submerged in a sea of crap. My only hope and desire is to be the best I can be in the service of God. So I think I have to make this video one day, and I might make it in relation to like how popular Doomer content is. But in there, he is pretty much talking about capitalism in many ways when he's talking about social hierarchies where people are forced to destroy each other. But as you can see, Jordan Peterson is both not a good role model for this guy, and it seems like this guy probably has underlying issues that go beyond, you know, his addiction to adult content. And that's why I think this subreddit is unhelpful, because you get people ranting like this, and you get people watching Jordan Peterson lectures and then talking about how all women are welfare seekers. So what you get is, because these communities are so male dominated, then they're worshipping people like Jordan Peterson who only barely talk about this addiction and give really bad self-help advice. Then you get people starting to watch him, and then they start talking like this. So that's why I feel like Jordan Peterson is a dangerous mix of like self-help advice, but always political stuff. Because you just get a guy like that who starts watching him and feeling like that's the answer to his problems. And then he starts talking about how women are just welfare seekers. And as I've always said, that Jordan Peterson offers no solutions to disenfranchised men, because what is your solution? That feminism is the cause of all your problems and stuff? But thankfully, I'm not the only person who thinks this, but I seem to be in the minority. So here's another post. So the man essence pseudoscience feels unhelpful to me. I've been on NoFap for a little while now. I found it refreshing to see so many supportive people, but I do have an issue with the Jordan Peterson-like stuff that I see on here, especially the stuff that came from that guy who calls chronic masturbation the problem because you're losing some kind of man essence. The pseudoscience seems to run throughout the NoFap community and leaves little room for women or people who don't use that metaphor. It's also not helpful because it avoids the actual problem. That's what I was saying. It's an addiction, literal dopamine addiction. Your brain literally changes and wants a kick from the pleasure trigger of watching this stuff. After a while, it needs more novel triggers, and you need to do it more often. When people do NoFap, they say the hardest part is experiencing disorientation, memory loss, depression, and craving. The reason for this is because your brain is literally undoing its addiction to dopamine triggers. What I like about the NoFap community is that it also encourages people to put their newfound time into hobbies for self-improvement. What you're really doing is training your brain to get dopamine highs from more productive alternatives like working out, learning skills, and learning languages. But I think it's problematic when all I see is this weird Jordan Peterson rhetoric because discipline is not masculine. It's just discipline. It's giving yourself expectations and rules and finding ways to trick yourself into sticking to it. It's reductive to say otherwise and potentially gives people too narrow a mindset to get through it. But I like what that guy is getting at, and I like the contrast that he's made with the other person. But sadly, that post was new and barely had any engagement. But I think it's what this community needed to hear, is that like this Jordan Peterson worship is just not helpful to people with any addiction. In my opinion, that can come from Jordan Peterson's own hypocrisy. In my opinion, it's more to do with putting everything on the individual to kick an addiction, when, like that post was saying, you're literally trying to rewire your brain to not want that dopamine high, or you're trying to replace it with something. Often people who abuse substances, like in Trainspotting 2, Renton becomes addicted to running for the dopamine high, right? Sometimes you've got to replace things, but I feel like with all this really, really bare bones advice that reads like a Tumblr post that they post there is just stupid. When they actually post Jordan Peterson's own advice and act like it's the best thing ever, I think it's just people who have bad critical thinking skills and haven't researched addiction enough, where they're blaming themselves, and that's just a problem of addiction anyway. People blame themselves when it's not their fault. They're in the mindset of, this is all my fault, I'm a bad person, how do I stop this? And then you read Jordan Peterson, it's like, oh, he's telling me how to improve my life on my own. I don't need help, I just need to follow his 12 rules for life. I just need to watch his lectures about addiction. I just need to listen to all of his advice about how I'm going to become a better person. And then if I follow that, I'll be cured. I won't be an addict anymore. And like medical professionals are saying, there are loads of things that work for different people, but I think it's pretty clear, like with most addictions, that people who are addicted to stuff generally need help. Yeah, there are going to be a few of you watching this who've kicked an addiction on your own, and that is good for you and stuff. But like all these articles were saying, there are various reasons for addiction. Some are due to environment, some is due to genetics, some is due to a whole range of factors. And a lot of those things go hand in hand often with mental illness or different mental conditions. And often an addiction is the sign of an underlying problem in that regard. So if you are addicted to something, and you can, hope people seek out medical advice and treatment, even if it is something like being addicted to adult film content, because in essence, like that post was saying, addiction is the same no matter what for a lot of people. Of course, some stuff is more severe to your general health, like substance abuse can be very life-threatening. But even if you're addicted to something like these guys are, it's all about stuff that's going on in your brain, and it's how your brain is wired, it's how you get dopamine, and it's that you actually rely on this stuff as a crutch for your life. And of course, like with any addiction, we learn about cigarette addiction, everyone does from a young age. It just feels like you need to do this and you can't stop. And as someone who knows loads of people who like smoke all the time and stuff, you hope they stop and you want them to stop, and they just don't stop. And you guys will know, if you have any addicts in your family with anything, you want them to stop, they'll say they'll stop, but when you don't get treatment, it's really, really hard to stop, because a lot of times individual action on addiction is not the only answer. Yes, it does help. Yes, it does help to, get into this mindset of you're going to stop this or find something to replace it, like running sometimes for other addicts. But at the end of the day, even if it is adult film addiction, you need treatment. And that's why I feel like this community is so unhelpful, because you have people who are really addicted, and then you have people who are doing it for some weird pseudoscience, and then loads of them also love Jordan Peterson's advice and think it's the answer to their problems. And I feel like that's just going to make it worse, because if you fail, right, if you believe it's all your fault, and then you listen to this guy who says you alone can overcome this, and then you fail, well, what's going to happen? You're going to feel even worse about yourself. Like that post that was saying that all women just want welfare and stuff, that seemed like a guy who was blaming everything on himself, like saying he was a loser and he was going to change, and now he hates women because he's been watching Jordan Peterson lectures. So anyway, that is it for the video. Just thought it was an interesting thing I'd share. Go check out my other 2 videos on this, where I do a more extensive dive into like the whole history of this stuff and like various conspiracy theories around it. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.